everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Politically Incorrect Podcast. I'm Jim Williams. Joining me, Alan Steinberg. And Alan, we do these things on Friday so that we can try to soak in as much as we can of what has happened this week. And so many things, so little time. Let's talk for a moment. I'll give you the floor. What was one of the or two of the things that popped out at you this week?
The two most significant events were the following. Number one relates to a theme I have had in my columns over the last 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. I have expressed a belief that the law and order message of Donald Trump was going to backfire. Mm-hmm. And I based that on my feeling that over the past 50 years, America's become a much less racist country, a much more tolerant country. I go all the way back to when I was in college at Northwestern, and George Wallace came to Cicero, Illinois, and I remember the hatred that just permeated that whole rally. Mm-hmm. We still have systemic racism in America, and it has to be a top priority for us to eliminate it. But on the other hand, rank and file America is a much better place. And I contended that this message would backfire. I'm not always right, but in this case, I was right on the money. And the news came out this morning, and this is huge, that the Trump campaign is going to be pulling all its advertisements dealing with the law and order theme. Now, there are two aspects of that are complicated. Number one, Donald is very undisciplined. And I don't see him staying off this issue. Racism is at this man's core. I can't see him staying away. In fact, last night, he went to this event and he talked about how our education in America was Marxist. He went into total overdrive. And he made the statement that, he was coming up with something basically to counter the 1609 Foundation. He said he was going to have something called the 1776 Foundation. It was going to take issue with all the theories that America is racist and all the rest. I mean, this is Donald trying to vindicate his George Wallace-side view. And that's one of the few it's evil sincere aspects of the man, and he can't get off it. But that leads to a second thing. The poll this week, there are polls that ask different questions. Mm-hmm. But the most significant poll of the week to me was the Ipsos Reuters poll. And they asked questions on what was the most important issue to the voters, to white suburban voters, is what they focused on.
Right.
What they found was that law and order was a distant third, almost fourth place. The top two issues were having a response to the coronavirus, number one, and number two is restoring trust in America. On both those issues, Joe Biden wipes the floor with Donald Trump. So I think the outlook is stronger and stronger for a Biden victory. He has a debate coming up next Thursday. Unless he made some monumental error in the debate, when I don't see him doing that. I think this reputation that he has for gaffes is really overblown and overplayed. He'll do well in the debate. It's Donald Trump that'll do poorly because based on what we saw on the ABC town meeting event last Tuesday night when he was with George Stephanopoulos, he was terrible. I think the outlook for a Biden victory is growing, perhaps a much bigger landslide than people will expect.
I was just going to talk about the compare and contrast of the Stephanopoulos interview and town hall meeting in relatively the same area. He was in Philadelphia and Joe was in Scranton yesterday doing his CNN thing. And it was interesting how out of touch the president was. Not that I'm stunned, but, he literally tried to BS his way through a town hall meeting, and there were a lot of people there who weren't having it. Compare that to Biden, who last night, he had a few gaffes. There's no question about it. But, throughout the entire evening, he was on topic. And he really drove home the issue of, and this kind of resonated, he kind of morphed the COVID-19 argument into the argument for a stronger version of, the Affordable Care Act 2.0. And he was very strong on the fact that, by the way, you do realize that the President of the United States is trying to take away your pre-existing conditions. And so I thought a lot of what he said last night resonated, with many different constituents. But I thought those 2 points were good. There was one that was kind of, I'm not quite sure where this is going to go, and that's because, as you know, we're both originally from the state of Pennsylvania. Fracking is something in the state of Pennsylvania that is a hot topic. And I think Joe kind of danced around it last night. I don't think he really addressed it, but he did his best. And he's, I think he's, if I'm not, I'll paraphrase here because I can't quote him exactly, but I think what he was talking about is we can continue fracking until we get to a point where we don't need to go, that direction in the energy. But as a bridge, we can continue to do it. So I don't know where that's going to fall, but for the most part, I think his town hall was very coherent and had a theme to it where Trump's was not.
Yes, I agree with that assessment. I think Trump has a new issue, which he probably thinks is great for him, but it is a silver bullet at his heart. And that is the emergence of William Barr. I'm doing a political emergence. I'm doing a column this week, and it's going to be called, "Is William Barr America's First Fascist Attorney General?" And I mean every word I say with that, because he has basically adopted the tenets of fascism. The best guide to fascism is the book by Jason Stanley of Yale University. And he talks about fascism as not really so much a governing ideology as it is a way of obtaining power and maintaining power. And that's what they're doing. They, for example, this 1776 move is a way of establishing white supremacy as the prevailing ideology. Their constant defense of police brutality is something that is in line with fascism, and their terming of protesters as revolutionaries is the ultimate. Barr actually investigated the possibility of trying protesters for sedition. That is the ultimate of a repressive society. And then finally, Barr compared the shutdowns, the lockdowns for the coronavirus. Right. He compared that with slavery. How could you have a more odious, racist, nefarious comparison than that? And as I heard this, I said to myself, I'm really terrified for this country, for what, we're going through. It's something that makes me feel like I'm living in a revival of McCarthyism, very much so.
Well, let's put a cherry on the top of what you just said by also sliding in there the fact that he attempted to look into his power to arrest the mayor of Portland.
Yes. Well, actually, he's the mayor of Seattle.
He was going after Seattle? I thought he was going after the mayor of Portland.
No, the mayor of Seattle.
Okay.
He mentioned, that all came out in the mix.
I apologize.
Seattle has that special zone, and
right.
They were trying to use that as a pretext.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really out of control right now. I have not lived in an era like this in my life. Well, I'm confident. I'm confident that we are going to be. We're going to get our country back on November 3rd. Although it's going to take a couple days of the count. But at the same time, it's frightening that America's come to this point. It really is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the thing that this week, you're right, the Barr revelations in how far Barr clearly is willing to go. I mean, there's a scenario that's been painted that because Republicans tend to vote in person, and Democrats this time around look as if they're going to really score big on the on the mail-in vote, that potentially Trump could be, leading in the vote count on the morning of the 4th of November, but with plenty of ballots left to go to count, and that Barr might just declare that that's the way, that's the count, and freeze everything. Now, legally, I don't see how he can do that, but it's not the first time that he's done things that have challenged the legal system.
He did something last night I've never heard an attorney general do. Even when Robert Kennedy, the brother of Jack Kennedy, was the attorney general, he basically gave a campaign pitch for Trump.
Yeah.
He said that we're headed towards socialism unless Donald Trump is reelected. That is absolutely an inappropriate use of his bully pulpit. Mm-hmm. He has a right to use his bully pulpit for the Trump agenda. That's all together appropriate. But to make a direct appeal for his election is not appropriate. But I have just come to be outraged by Bill Barr. I used to think that John Mitchell under Nixon was the worst attorney general we've ever had. I think that John Mitchell, compared to Bill Barr, was John Marshall.
Huh.
I think this guy is by far the worst danger to our system of ordered liberty in American history.
In the not-for-nothing category, yesterday, while Barr was making headlines, FBI Director Christopher Wray was testifying on Capitol Hill. And Director Wray specifically said that when asked, do we have a domestic terrorism problem in this country? And the director answered yes. And then he proceeded to lay out that by a score of 10 more than, so to speak, the white supremacist groups are the most dangerous groups in the United States. And when asked about Antifa, which of course is the boogeyman, which the president would like you to think is going to permeate the suburbs and has caused all the riots, that they, according to Chris Wray, found no credible evidence that Antifa had anything to do with anything.
I couldn't agree with you more. On that subject. And I am not a leftist. I am not pro-Antifa, but he made the point that Antifa is not an organization. It is a movement.
Right.
It is not a movement advocating violence, by the way, although some people who subscribe to their ideology have used violence, but it is not a movement that advocates violence. And the attempt by the Trump administration to equate them with the white supremacists and to play down white supremacists is an abuse of power. It is outrageous, and it is absolutely a breach of the president's oath of office.
The other thing that Chris Wray brought up was that unlike the militia groups and the white supremacist groups, Antifa isn't even truly an organization in the United States. It's
a movement.
It is a movement, but what I'm saying is it's not even a coherent movement.
That's true.
So, it lacks the cohesion that you have with these white supremacist organizations as well as, the militia organizations. So, even if you try to make that theory of the case, it doesn't hold up. But, and then of course the president goes on Twitter on his way to Wisconsin and berates the man who he picked because he fired the other FBI director. So, it's almost an alternative, universe where the president of the United States is fighting with people who he appointed.
I have to tell you, the degree of incoherence on his part, aside from the substance being repulsive to me, the incoherence is frightening. He tries to. And the other factor is that he is willing to go places in the because of a lack of coherent message that no one else would go. For example, right now he's making the argument that Biden is basically a senile person with dementia, and is also a pedophile.
Right.
I mean, that's outrageous. I mean, I can't imagine any candidate of either party, or even someone like a George Wallace, that ever would have been willing to do that.
No, that's
This man is
a bridge too far.
But the worst thing was Jared Kushner, who I think is the penultimate of politics. He goes on with Wolf Blitzer, and Wolf Blitzer asks him, what do you think of your father-in-law trying to term Joe Biden as a pedophile? Don't you think that's outrageous? And the response of Jared Kushner was, well, the great thing about Donald Trump is he's always transparent. You know what he thinks. I couldn't believe that one. I couldn't believe that he was in any way acquiescing in the notion that what Donald Trump is doing is correct and proper. I agree with what I'm trying to remember exactly who it was. I think it was Dana Milbank who said that. I remember it was Hal Raines who said that Jared Kushner couldn't get a job as a congressional intern, let alone the special assistant to the president of the United States.
Well, personally, I prefer the one given by Donnie Deutsch, and that is that he should, his next job is going to be selling condos in Boca. Anyway, tell you what, let's step aside, take a quick break. We'll come back. We can talk about some continued fallout from Bob Woodward's book, as well as a quick look at the election, as we are just a little over 40 days out. So stay with us. We'll be back with more of the Politically Incorrect podcast with Jim Williams and Alan Steinberg right after this. Hey, folks. Let's talk a little bit about my new friends at Ground News. Now, it's an app that I've got on my phone, and we're all newsies, right? I mean, let's be honest. You wouldn't be listening to the Politically Incorrect podcast if you didn't like the news. And, one of the things we like about the news, or we hope to like about the news, is that the news is not BS, that we know that the news we're getting is real news and not news that has a slant to it one way or the other. Well, there's a way to make certain that that the news you are getting, where it's coming from, whether it's slanted one way or the other. Look, in many ways, all news, in some ways, are biased, right? I mean, reporters may add biased language consciously or unconsciously, but the outcome's the same. You get biased news, and it impacts how you see the world. Now, Ground News is a brand new app, and it's easy to get it at the Google Play Store. You can get it at the App Store for those of you who are on the Apple devices, and it's free. You can download it. It provides readers with objective data about the underlying political bias in published news stories. Now, again, as we said before, either consciously or unconsciously, there is always a little bit of bias. But how much, and where's it coming from? Well, that's what Ground News does. Ground News synthesizes this for you and breaks it down in a fascinating way. It's truly fascinating. It's, frankly, it's a groundbreaking first ever news comparison platform. There's nothing like it. Ground News collects data from over 50,000 news sources, runs it in real-time media bias tracking. Then the coverage bias rating is given visually, shown alongside the story. So for every story you read, you can compare how reporting differs across sources with different political biases, see if the coverage of the story skews more to the left or to the right. Hopefully, it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, this is a news person's dream, okay? This is geek out stuff, okay? You guys are going to freak out about it. It is so much fun. Ground News represents the larger movement, the people who, frankly, are fed up with traditional high politicized news. No one wants to be spoon fed ideas, suddenly influenced. No way. Don't want that. Ground news gives power to the people, so you can make up your own mind. And look, if I know anything about you folks who follow us on the Politically Incorrect podcast, you all have your own minds. I've been on Twitter with you. I know. This, my friends, is going to be something you're going to have a lot of fun with. But at the same time, and I really don't want this to go unnoticed, at the same time you're having fun and being able to really use their little meter to decide which, where's it coming from? Is this a highly conservative publication? Is it a highly liberal publication? Where is it on the spectrum? It is a lot of fun, but more importantly, you know where that news is coming from, and you know how close to the middle it really is. And look, that's all you can ask for, folks. But I'll tell you what, because ground news are such cool people, and because they like the Politically Incorrect podcast, they're going to give us a deal. All right. So all this information, by the way, is going to be in the show box below, but pay attention. Okay. You ready? All you want to do right now is head over to ground.news/my last name Williams. That's ground.news/my last name Williams, WILLIAMS. Enter the code my name Williams to get 1 month free of Ground News Pro as an exclusive limited time offer. Listeners to the Politically Incorrect podcast will get 20% off. That's 20% off Ground News Premium memberships. Okay? Let me repeat that. For those of you who listen to us right here on the Politically Incorrect podcast, you're going to get 20% off Ground News Premium membership. So that's something you're going to want. So what are you waiting for? Start judging the truth for yourself and start today. That's right. Go out to ground.news/Williams. That's ground.news/Williams. Enter the promo code Williams. Get 1 month free of Ground News Pro. And for a limited time, you can get 20% off Ground News Premium memberships. All right. So look, folks, all the information is in the show box below. Go there now. Sign up. Ground News. You're going to want it. You're going to need it as we get through the next 65 days trying to decide just exactly who's telling the truth in the media. Welcome back, everybody. Jim Williams, Alan Steinberg. Alan, we have a situation where you talked about the Attorney General. Basically, there's a number of things that have gone on, lawsuits and such. Two key lawsuits that were settled in court yesterday. One having to do with Pennsylvania and their ability to extend the voter registration voter registration for mail-in ballots and the mail-in ballot counts. So in other words, if you mail it, and it is postmarked prior to the date of the election, which of course is November 3rd, they still have to count the ballot. And the other one, of course, having to do with the fact that there does not seem to be voter fraud in any other, to the degree of in any way, shape, or form that the president and Attorney General Barr would like you to think.
Well, it just reinforces the point that voter fraud is very, very limited in this country because it's very easily detectable and it's very quickly accountable. So it doesn't exist in any significant form. But I think as we're looking at the election, though, Biden is prepared. He operationally is one of the best candidates I've seen. There's an article in the New York Times how he has a election unit. Some of the people are well known in New Jersey. But he has two former solicitors general on that squad.
Right.
That's excellent. Prepared for anything to follow the election. And I think that, he's learned down through the years what happened in other elections, and he has to be. I think as far as the election itself, I'm getting very confident. It's amazing because I left the Republican Party. I haven't joined the Democratic Party, but I want the Democratic takeover of the Senate because of what I think is the hopeless pollution of the Republican Party with racism right now. I want a Democratic takeover, and I think we're going to get it. I'll give you the seats as to my reason why. I think the Republicans will pick up the seat over in Alabama. But I think the Democrats are virtually certain to pick up seats in North Carolina with Cal Cunningham. I think they're going to pick up a seat with Sarah Gideon in Maine. I think they basically have already won the race in Colorado, where Cory Gardner is up and former Governor Hickenlooper, actually current Governor Hickenlooper, is running against him. I think he's
right.
A sure winner. And I think the outlook is very good for the Democrats to win in Montana with Mike Bullock. I think the outlook is very good for them to win, with an insurgent candidate in Iowa. And I have mixed emotions about this one because I used to like Lindsey Graham, and I've turned against him very strongly. But I think he's in a lot of trouble. He's only running evenly in South Carolina against Jamie Harrison, and Jamie Harrison is a very good candidate. So the outlook for the Democrats to capture the Senate is excellent.
Well, I think that, at the moment, it looks like if things hold tight and true, that they'll end up at 52-49, I think, at this point.
They only pick up 3 seats, assuming Biden is elected president. They only need a net pickup.
And they need 4.
No, they need 4 if he's not elected.
Right. They need right. Okay. But I think you're right. I think that what we're seeing right now is it's almost alternative reality, because these guys. I think Susan Collins has to lose. I mean, that just has to happen, and I think she will in Maine. But at the end of the day, I think that what we're seeing is these candidates. I mean, Susan Collins went to the extent during a debate of saying, when asked, "Are you going to support the president in the election in 2020?" She basically said, "I have to think about it." Now, wait a minute. I mean, are you kidding me?
Had she outright repudiated the president, she would be in pretty strong shape in this race. But she just waffled and wavered, particularly on the Supreme Court appointments. And she just came over as a person with no backbone at all. I think that her has been a disaster from a political point of view. So I think she's gone. I think Sarah Gideon has a 90% chance of a victory in that race.
Yeah, the other thing is, we've been around this game long enough to know that the old saying, which seems to be cliche, really isn't. And that is, when you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing no one. And I think that's where Susan Collins, certainly in the last 2 years, it's gone. She's tried desperately to make it look like, no, I'm really independent. I can do this. And then all of a sudden she folds like a cheap suit on situations where she could have shown that she had a profile and courage. But that doesn't seems like the only one that remembers what the Republican Party used to stand for was Mitt Romney.
Yes, and that's why Romney is in a strong position. He would be in a stronger position if he could recruit some Republicans to his cause. Right. That's the one mystery that I have not come to any conclusions as to, and that's what is going to happen to the Republican Party after this election, because I think it's going to be a very brutal gnashing of teeth and internal struggle coming up.
Oh, I think there's no question about it. You've got Trump, who will likely start his own network, who will likely make it seem like, Fox, is MSNBC, and he'll play the role of kingmaker. That's what he's going to try to do.
I don't know if he will. I think the Trump piss will continue to be active.
Mm-hmm.
I think the followers of Trump will continue to be very strong. But he looks physically terrible. And I think that he's running out of gas.
But if he picks the right people, all I'm saying is from a network standpoint, right? He can pick the right people.
I don't disagree with the idea that he may try to get his own network, but I think you're going to see him recede somewhat. He does not look healthy. And I know he has this big ego, but at a certain point, the realities of health have to govern what you're going to do. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the key point there, too, is how. I'm fumbling at the words because it's hard to fathom. Here's a party that has spurned the people who I may disagree with, but I certainly don't disrespect them. And I'm talking about obviously the Bush family with Jeb and his situation. There's a governor here in the state of Maryland, Governor Larry Hogan, and obviously DeWine in Ohio and Kasich in Ohio. I mean, there's a lot of Democrats, a lot of Republicans who, were part of the old guard, and they've been pushed aside. I don't see how they're going to get welcomed back in, because this new group is not a welcoming group.
No. In fact, it does not seem to have any strategy for extending its boundaries. Well, it's kind of like they're just trying to make their base more intense. That doesn't win you elections.
Right. Well, when George W. Bush won his second term, he won it with a very strong Latino following. And that Latino following has fallen way off since, Bush was elected. And Bush, look, George W. Bush, I respect him. I respected him as someone who actually, I did business with him when, we were getting the Texas Rangers rights, and he was still involved with the Rangers as the managing partner. He's not, in some regards, I look at him as in Joe Biden in the same light in a couple of ways. One, people always thought that neither of these guys were very, were challenged when it came to being public speakers. But when push came to shove and you had to do it, Bush could deliver a very powerful message, and genuinely, whether you disagree with them or didn't, you know at the core they're good people. And so, as I say, you can disagree with people, which is fine, but I never disrespected George W. Bush at all, because I knew him to be a good person. So
he was very good. Very, very decent. I worked for him, and that was the thing that always struck you when you left. You said, I'm working for someone who is profoundly decent.
I got a quick story which you'll appreciate. Nicole Wallace was talking about a bit, which I had actually heard before this, but it was the difference between Trump watching television and George W. Bush watching television was, as we all remember, that Keith Olbermann was at MSNBC and doing the primetime show. at 8:00, and Keith had, really lit into George W. Bush about something or another. Well, the whole press shop is all freaked out about this, and how is the president going to react to what Keith had said? So Nicole goes in with the press, team to sit down and go over their morning briefing with the president, and she goes to President Bush, I don't know if you saw it, but whatever Keith said last night, we can go out and strongly, rebuke it. Don't worry, we've got this handled. And he said, why would Keith Olbermann talk about me on SportsCenter? And so he was oblivious to the fact that Keith Olbermann was with ESPN anymore, which goes again to prove that when George W. Bush just chose to watch television, it normally was some sporting event. It was maybe some entertainment program. It was not. He didn't spend his entire time watching, cable news.
Well, because he wasn't obsessed with what his critics might say.
Right.
He wanted to know, but it wasn't an obsession with him. Donald Trump, the amount of television he watched over the past week, it got out. It was just incredible. And he's not doing his work as president. It's just unbelievable.
Well, now there is advantage this weekend, okay? We know how big a golf fan he is. And the U.S. Open golf tournament is being played this weekend. Perhaps, we might get a respite from the tweet storms because of the U.S. Open being around.
I'm not sure.
Okay, we can only. Hey, look, you can dream, right? You can dream. Let's go over some final thoughts here. As I said, there were a couple of more revelations that came out of Woodward's book, specifically about the generals, being terrified of what he may or may not do. And I think at the end of the day, Bob's book has held up very, very well. And I did have a conservative talk show host who I was speaking to the other day. I will make it so he remains nameless. But he said to me, he goes, who in their right mind during their presidency invites Bob Woodward into the office and expects them to like him?
Well, that's absolutely true. But I know why Trump did it. Because Woodward had written that book,
the one
without Trump's cooperation, and it had gone very badly. Right. And Trump absolutely is such a narcissist and egotist that he thought that he could charm Woodward into giving him a much better interview, a much better outcome.
Right.
And it was foolishness. He was dealing with the top professional, and he was going on his ground.
Right.
He must drive his press staff crazy. But I don't know how confident they are.
Such as they are. Yeah, such as they are.
Well, that's the point. Yeah, such as they are.
Yeah, it's really funny. I mean, there's a lot of crazy going on here. Let's talk about your social media. Where to find it?
I'm sorry, there's some ulterior force trying to break in here. My social media is my Twitter is at @Steinberg613. My Facebook page is Alan Joel Steinberg. And you can read my columns on InsiderNJ.com.
Special thanks to our partner in crime, Alan Steinberg. We'll be back with some final thoughts right after this. Hey, folks. Let's talk a little bit about my new friends at Ground News. Now, it's an app that I've got on my phone. And we're all newsies, right? I mean, let's be honest. You wouldn't be listening to the Politically Incorrect podcast if you don't like the news. And, one of the things we like about the news, or we hope to like about the news, is that the news is not BS. That we know that the news we're getting is real news and not news that has a slant to it one way or the other. Well, there's a way to make certain that you know that the news you are getting, where it's coming from, whether it's slanted one way or the other. Look, in many ways, all news, in some ways, are biased, right? I mean, reporters may add biased language consciously or unconsciously, but the outcome's the same. You get biased news, and it impacts how you see the world. Now, Ground News is a brand new app, and it's easy to get it at the Google Play Store. You can get it at the App Store for those of you who are on the Apple devices, and it's free. You can download it. It provides readers with objective data about the underlying political bias in published news stories. Now, again, as we said before, either consciously or unconsciously, there is always a little bit of bias. But how much? And where's it coming from? Well, that's what Ground News does. Ground News synthesizes this for you and breaks it down in a fascinating way. It's truly fascinating. It's, frankly, it's a groundbreaking first ever news comparison platform. There's nothing like it. Ground News collects data from over 50,000 news sources, runs it in real-time media bias tracking. Then the coverage bias rating is given visually shown alongside the story. So for every story you read, you can compare how reporting differs across sources with different political biases, see if the coverage of the story skews more to the left or to the right. Hopefully, it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, this is a news person's dream, okay? This is geek out stuff, okay? You guys are going to freak out about it. It is so much fun. Ground News represents the larger movement of people who, frankly, are fed up with traditional high politicized news. No one wants to be spoon-fed ideas, suddenly influenced. No way. Don't want that. Ground News gives power to the people so you can make up your own mind. And look, if I know anything about you folks who follow us on the Politically Incorrect podcast, you all have your own minds. I've been on Twitter with you. I know. This, my friends, is going to be something you're going to have a lot of fun with. But at the same time, and I really don't want this to go unnoticed, at the same time you're having fun and being able to really use their little meter to decide which, where's it coming from? Is this a highly conservative publication? Is it a highly liberal publication? Where is it on the spectrum? It is a lot of fun, but more importantly, you know where that news is coming from, and you know how close to the middle it really is. And look, that's all you can ask for, folks. But I'll tell you what, because Ground News are such cool people, and because they like the Politically Incorrect podcast, they're going to give us a deal. All right. So all this information, by the way, is going to be in the show box below, but pay attention. Okay. You ready? All you want to do right now is head over to ground.news/my last name Williams. That's ground.news/my last name Williams, WILLIAMS. Enter the code my name Williams to get 1 month free of Ground News Pro as an exclusive limited time offer. Listeners to the Politically Incorrect podcast will get 20% off. That's 20% off Ground News Premium memberships. Okay? Let me repeat that. For those of you who listen to us right here on the Politically Incorrect podcast, you're going to get 20% off Ground News Premium membership. So that's something you're going to want. So what are you waiting for? Start judging the truth for yourself and start today. That's right. Go out to ground.news/Williams. That's ground.news/Williams. Enter the promo code Williams. Get 1 month free of Ground News Pro. And for a limited time, you can get 20% off Ground News Premium memberships. All right. So look, folks, all the information is in the show box below. Go there now. Sign up. Ground News. You're going to want it. You're going to need it as we get through the next 65 days trying to decide just exactly who's telling the truth in the media. Welcome back, everybody. Now, if you're not one of the over 35,000 people who've taken the time to subscribe to our podcast, well, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, we make it simple. All you have to do is go to the Apple Podcast Store. Same thing over at the Google Podcast Store. You can find us on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, as well as iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube, to name a few. You can also find us on connected devices like Alexa or, of course, the Google devices, and, of course, Siri on the Apple side. All you have to do is say, hey, Alexa, play the latest edition of the Politically Incorrect Podcast with Jim Williams, and they'll do it for you, okay? Now, if for some reason you can't seem to find us, which is almost inconceivable, but okay, pull out the old Google machine, type in the Politically Incorrect Podcast with Jim Williams, hit the favorite button or subscribe button. Each week you'll get a brand new edition of the show sent directly to your phone, your tablet, or hopefully to both, okay? Already out there, we're about 43 days out from voting. Voting has begun in a number of states out there. You have continued to have the opportunity to get a mail-in ballot, be it a mail-in ballot or a absentee ballot. Check the rules of the state where you live in. Be sure to go only to the websites that are the state websites. Be careful of some third-party websites. They don't necessarily tell you everything you need to know. And when you're filling out a ballot for a mail-in situation or for absentee, you must follow every one of the rules, and the rules are very clearly placed there for you. So just check that box off and make sure you get everything right there. Now, we expect that there's going to be more than ever a large group of people who will be voting early, either by mail-in vote or by early vote whenever your state has that early voting process. So by all means, follow the CDC reports, make certain that you're, socially distanced from other people, wear masks, and vote, because your vote has never counted more, all right? Get out there, get ready, and in 43 days, we'll vote. And 1 week from now, Alan and I will be back, and we will bring you a little bit more information as best we can as we prepare you for the 2020 election. Have a wonderful weekend, and to all of our Jewish friends, myself included, we wish you a very happy and healthy New Year as we get ready to usher in Rosh Hashanah. Be well, everyone. Take care. Bye.